Explore an ever-changing map with hints of unique world building wrapped up in a roguelite that features strategic turn-based battles. Welcome everyone, StealthyShiroean here, and today I'm bringing a first look at Sandwalkers. Goblin Z Studio developed Sandwalkers with Goblin Z Publishing and H2 Interactive acting as publishers. Recently, they released the game into early access and were gracious enough to grant me a key. As always, this will not influence my thoughts in any way, which I think will be rather apparent as the video goes on. Introductions aside, let's get to it. I don't really have much to say about the game's presentation. Personally, I think the game looks great. The opening cinematic and voiceover does an excellent job to portray the world the game is set in. The map is by and large readable, and points of interest are easily recognizable for the caravan to explore. The game's backgrounds for the fights and their excellent pixel art for the characters is what shines the most though. I really liked all of the intricately designed animations for the characters, and it was fun to try out different ones just for that reason alone. The story setup here is compelling and interesting, but it doesn't hold together very well once you get going. Although I feel this is a problem for most roguelites. The world in Sandwalkers is ravaged by a horrible storm that has made many places inhospitable. Once long ago there existed many trees that the inhabitants of the world lived around. Since the storm has raged, these trees became few and far between. Now an existing tribe of people, known as the Macaw, send out caravans to find other trees in hope to link up their scattered band of survivors. At the same time, these caravans learn more about the world so that future caravans might accomplish their overarching goal. Players are tasked with leading the 14th caravan to that goal, but obviously this is a roguelite, so the 14th quickly becomes 15th, 16th, 17th, and so on. I really like the world building presented here, but I would have loved to see a bit more. There are events the caravans can come across that add to this, but they seem so limited. It didn't take long for me to run into the same events again and again. All these events turn into a simple click for gains or lower penalty than any world building or effective change to the world such as suggested on the Steam page. In Sandwalkers, there are two distinct modes that follow an overworld map where you guide your caravan through the world, and the turn-based battles. On the overworld map, you have a number of things to manage, with the primary ones being supplies, the party health, and their hope. Supplies are critical for the success, or maybe not the success, but at least the longevity of the caravan. Every move on the board costs supplies, and once you run out of those, then it costs your party's health. Your caravan can come across points of interest where they can resupply and find other items in the world to sell or use. Other places will also prompt the player with an event where they'll need to make choices which affect the party in one way or another. Chief among those is the effect on hope. If hope is high, then they have a better chance for good events and gain buffs in battle, but opposite if their hope is low. If it gets down too low, well, not sure because that never happened to me, but I'd assume that's a fail state along with dying. Or maybe the fact that it makes it easier to die is enough. And of course, along the way, you're bound to get in a fight or two with bandits, monsters, and the like. Combat plays out in turns, with each participant landing somewhere on an initiative turn order tracker. All of your characters have an assortment of attacks to buff, debuff, or just do straight damage to the enemy. In addition, if you break the enemy's shields, then you could stun them for a turn. It's strategic enough, but it does feel like many times I was doing whatever the strongest attack each character had to get that stun. However, I did start using other utility abilities when I couldn't stun them on that turn. Or at least, I did this in fights that were winnable, because you will more than likely run across enemies that will absolutely destroy you. For the longest time, I didn't think there was any way of determining the strength of a potential opponent, so I just learned to try and avoid fights as I explored further out. I found out later, from someone on the Steam forums, that there's an indicator which lets you know the difficulty. However, I thought it was only used to determine the difficulty of the potential ambushing enemies, because there was no indication telling me otherwise. Lack of information for the player is something that I felt was really prevalent throughout my experience. The game is very open-ended, and you're thrown into it with a goal to travel east, which tells you that's recommended for higher levels. And another quest that just tells you to find the lost fragments. There's no direction, so I always was left wondering what to do. So I wandered around and explored my surroundings until I died. At first I headed east anyway and assumed that as I continued to do so, then my runs would get incrementally better. After a few runs, I decided maybe it's best to try and level up in earlier areas first in an effort to prepare for those tougher fights. The problem is that even the beginning fights can slowly whittle your party down until they meet their demise. And essentially, I repeated this again and again. There's supposed to be quests at various hubs, but I never once saw one available to accept, which I wasn't sure what was up with that. After your run inevitably ends, you can spend the memories you collected to upgrade your caravan. Things like extra damage, the ability to hold more supplies, and other things, of which most of them were locked off because I either needed more fragments or I needed to complete quests, which, again, I wasn't able to do. However, it's almost random as to how I collected these memories. Some runs would end with me having a nice collection of memory points to spend on upgrades, whereas other runs that were seemingly really good ended with no memories at all. I didn't understand why this was, and I don't remember the game ever explaining it. Maybe it was something incredibly obvious that I missed, though. Before I jump into my final thoughts, please consider giving this video a like if you enjoyed it, as that helps me out greatly with the YouTube algorithm gods. Overall, I put about 5 hours into the game, and I felt this was a good enough time to get a feel for what to expect. I think there's something interesting here, and it's worth a try for those who want something different from the roguelite genre. That said, I'm not quite sure it's for me, although I'll admit that roguelites in general aren't usually my go-to genre. I did love the world building here, and I think given a bit more time to cook, it could draw me back into playing it again. Which, once again, this game is in early access, so there's plenty of time left for them to change things before release. Along with things mentioned earlier about lack of direction and telegraphing to the player, I did come across a few bugs that I'd like to mention for any developers who may be watching. Some of it was little things like the text not loading properly, or maybe it was placeholder, and I noticed that the combat UI wasn't uniform. What I mean is that the text box when hovering over characters would appear smaller when highlighting characters further back from the camera. This made the information hard to read at times. The larger issues were when rewards for event choices didn't register. I specifically noticed this with reputation changes, but sometimes my reputation would remain unchanged in subsequent runs, unless this was the intent. Furthermore, some of the choices stopped showing the chances of something to happen or any rewards or penalties. I wasn't sure if this was a bug, or if it was because I already did the event so many times that I couldn't get anything from it anymore. And for any who played Sandwalkers, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If not, let me know if it looks like something you'd be interested in, or if you have any other questions. I hope this video helped you in some small way, and if it did, then please consider leaving a like, comment, subscribe, or whatever it is you feel like doing. Thanks for watching, and have a nice day.